Okay, so so what we want to go through is to go through this scenario, which I think typically happens in most organizations. And I think the reason why this kind of stuff is good is because normally or typically when people are trying to do stuff related to cybersecurity, they're always restricted to, I mean, the basic stuff, but there's no actual
Practical.
yes, exactly. Practical stuff that gives them an idea of, okay, this scenario could typically happen in any organization. So this is what
Yeah.
this is showing us. So I think it's going to be a good learning call for anyone that maybe is trying to get started or is already in cybersecurity. Maybe someone that's gotten the basics of cybersecurity and just needs a sort of hands-on or something to task them. I think this is a good stuff.
Okay.
So what we have here is a scenario or an issue report. So just going to go through the scenario and then we'll now try to figure out like certain things.
Okay.
So the scenario, Cyteria,
How do you pronounce that? Is it Society?
Honest, honestly, I don't. Honestly, I don't know.
I just call Cyteria, just Cyteria.
Like,
I think the idea is light. Just Cyteria.
yeah. So I don't know if okay, maybe it's like maybe you can call it Cyteria though. So I think that's fine. So Cyteria Inc. is a 15-person materials science development organization serving the GTA. I don't know what GTA is, but most of the engineering staff work on client projects on the machines in the SciTech offices. Their network consists of a number of machines as described in the diagram above. So we have a diagram or we have diagrams. All the Windows machines are centrally managed by their single domain controller. So I think at this point, people need to know or need to understand what is single domain controller, but we'll get to that point. This server is also used by the Macintosh machines as the Mac machines for login credentials. They also have a publicly facing web server, maybe it's hosting their website or something. No services are available off-site other than the email, which is facilitated by an on-site instance of Exchange. All servers and employee machines are running default installs of the operating system and applications. So they are saying that all the servers they have, they've not done any hardening, no further configurations. It's just the way it came and all. So we have what to do here. So we are supposed to look over the scenario above and understand it in the first place. That's very important. And then
Yeah.
examine the configuration information of the machines in the network. So we need to look at the diagram, understand, okay, this is the infrastructure, this is how their network is, this is how it works, this is how communication occurs. Then we now go to this website, cve.mitre.org, and then we'll select CVE list search from the drop down, mark CVE list. Then by typing various keywords, e.g. Ubuntu 18.04, find a single specific security flaw. So they underlined it and they made it in bold, single specific. So obviously there might be many flaws or vulnerabilities in this organization based on what we are seeing here, but they said we should just find one and then concentrate on that one. So we are looking for a single specific security flaw that affects SciTech Inc. In other words, it must affect a piece of hardware or software that the scenario clearly mentions. So that means whatever you are discussing must affect one of the hardware that is in this organization or the software that is installed on the hardware or any of the servers.
Right.
And it said do not select a buffer overflow attack that affects SQL Server unless the scenario clearly mentions that they use SQL Server. So we are not supposed to assume that, oh, because they have because they have a web server that they are running Apache. So we shouldn't assume, except they said, oh, these people are actually using Apache and stuff like that. Then we need to make sure that the flaw is available in the version of the software installed on the system. Then we need to read over the flaw we have chosen and do a few Google searches to find out how it works. Um, so then once we do all those, then we need to fill in the issue form. Okay. All right. So I think this is really good because we are seeing so many things. It will enable us to do like more. I wouldn't call it OSINT because we're not really doing any investigation, but we are trying to get more information that it's open source, based on the information we already have on this server. So what do you think? I mean, what do you think looking at this,
Mm.
uh, the diagram
Just
that we have here?
yeah, just like I told you earlier, I had to read over and over, and I think the more I go through, the more I get more information. But looking at the servers from the diagram, they have the domain controller server, they have the employee server, they have the HR, the marketing server, the application server, and all this and all that, and employee machine server. Like how many servers are there? Like one, two, three, four, five. I think six servers, right?
Yeah, one, two, three. I think it's just three though. The mail server, this domain
Okay, mail server.
controller, and
Okay,
this web
yeah,
server. Yeah,
and the web server, yeah, yeah. But I think, but to me, from the whole scenario, the major concern is, in as much as all of them are running on default configuration, to me, my major concern here is the domain server, which is the DOM1, all right?
yeah,
Yeah, and the email server, which is yeah, where did I?
yeah.
Yeah, email
Okay,
server, the domain
okay,
server and the mail server.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
So
yeah,
yeah, so looking at if we look at this the entire network and the way they've set it up, and then if we go back to the scenario, we would see
yeah,
here if you see the diagram here has a representation. You see here there's I don't know if it's an orange or yellow color, then there's a pink color or peach color, and then
yeah,
there's like gray. These three are gray. This one is green. So what this is showing is that it's showing us that if you look at the IP address of this machine, this is 192.168.10.1. This
yeah,
one is 192.168.10.3. This one is
yeah,
192.168.10.2. So they are in the same subdomain, same
yeah,
subnet, sorry, same subnet, and same subnet because it's 10 dot something, 10 dot something, 10 dot something. So they can easily communicate with each other or they're in the same subnet. Why these ones are in different subnets? Because they're in different colors. If you see this one is 192.168.2. So that's already
yeah,
saying that this is on a different subnet. This one is dot one. This
yeah,
HR marketing dot one. Why this one is okay, so on 192.168.1.0, okay, this is almost like in the same place. This slash 24 is just saying it's spanning from 0 to 254 255. So I
yeah,
think these two could possibly be a dot one. There's no other dot one. Okay, so I think these two could be in the same subnet. And okay, just looking at the diagram first before we go back to the scenario, we can see that the office staff, they are making use of machine names. Okay, so they've given all these office staff conventional names because every organization in the first place would have conventional name for their laptops or their computers or their workstations just so that they can identify the workstation on the network. So it depends on the organization. They have their conventional name. Some will name it based on the department. They could say something like PC marketing, so it to be MAR, and then maybe the specific after the department, maybe the specific number, maybe the first person in the department, maybe the manager will be 001, the next
yeah,
person will be 002, something like that. But they always have conventional name that you can use to identify the user in that organization. So here their machine names or their conventional name is PCSCI1, PC like that to 4, which represents these 4 different workstations or computers in this case. And then the configuration we are looking at here is saying that these computers are Windows 10 and it's November 19, 2019, 2020 build. Then it's Intel i5, that's Core i5, 9th generation CPU, then 8 gig RAM, Intel graphics Z. So it's giving us all the information we need about the office staff. So the marketing people, they use MacBooks. For some reason, they use MacBooks in this application. So Mac A, Mac B, Mac C. It's giving us the configuration of the MacBooks, 8 gig RAM also. Then engineering also, they make use of Windows computers. We can see Windows 10. These people use Windows 10, but they are on the service pack version. This version, though, this is the version number. And then again, they have Intel i9 9th generation, 16 gig RAM. So the engineering version, the engineering department, they are using more RAM compared to the office staff, which is 8 gig RAM. So then maybe they need more RAM for their softwares and everything. Then looking at the web server here, the web server here is running, obviously this is a Windows web server. You can see Windows Server 2008 R2, and it has Microsoft IIS 7.5, and then it's 32 gig RAM, and this one is also 32 gig RAM, Windows Server, but this one is 2012, so it's 2008, so it's 2012, and it's Exchange Server. So once you see Exchange Server, once you hear something about Exchange, obviously that's telling us, right, that is email, that is a mail server. And then the domain controller here is also a Windows Server 2012. So these two are using the same version of Windows Server 2012
Yeah,
R2.
the main
Yeah,
controller and the server, yeah.
yeah. So I think now we've sort of understood the way they set up. These 3 are in the same subnet. Now let's go back and look at the scenario. So I said most of the engineering staff work on client projects on the machine. Okay, their network consists of a number of machines as described in the diagram. All the Windows machines are centrally managed by their single domain controller. So this Windows machine are managed by this. So this is where maybe they have their Active Directory and they can do all the setup and configuration of these other workstations. So this is what they use the domain controller for, to manage the configuration. And I mean, if they have AD as the Active Directory, which is now called Entra ID, they would handle and fix all any configuration, any settings, any policies. This guy would do the setup. And then they said this server is also used by the Macintosh machine for login credential. Okay. So this server, I think they're talking about the domain controller. It's also
Yeah.
used by this Mac for login credentials. So they have a publicly facing web server. So this web server is publicly facing. So when they say something is publicly facing, that means it's accessible on the internet. Maybe it's hosting their website, so people can visit their website, interact with their website, view stuff, register stuff, and whatever it is. So that's why it says publicly facing this web server. No services are available off-site other than email. So it means for you to use or make use of any service here, you have to be in their network, the internal network. If not, it's not going to work.
Like within the premises, right?
Yes,
Mm.
yes, within the premises, or it's not going to work. But I
Yeah.
assume maybe if they have VPNs, that might solve some problem. But anyway, they didn't really state that.
Don't
So
specify the
yes,
scenario.
so we are sticking with what they said here. So no services are available off-site other than email, which is facilitated by an on-site instance of Exchange. So this is what the on-site instance of Exchange, maybe they have it physical server in that organization. So it's not a cloud instance of the Exchange server based on what they said here. So it's maybe the server is hosted in that building or wherever they are. And all servers and employee machines are running default installations of operating systems and application, which means obviously it's going to be vulnerable to some form of attacks and stuff. Because I mean, this is not really a good idea. So I think at this point we've understood the infrastructure. I think maybe we can now go to try to attempt the task, which is the first thing is to look for any. So we've examined the configuration information. The next thing will be to search for a CVE that affects any of maybe the software or hardware in this organization.
Please, if you're enjoying the video and if you're getting some value, please consider subscribing. Also, please hit that like button. We want other people to see this, and don't forget to share this video. Also, thank you, and let's continue the video.
Okay, so I said we should. So we know that CVE is these common vulnerabilities and exposure. So it's any vulnerability that has been found or that has been exposed or has been made public. They would tag it. Yeah, they will tag it with a CVE ID so that everyone can always refer to it and say, oh, that's vulnerability, that's 0-day vulnerability. This is the CVE ID in case you want to read more about it. Yeah, so and that's the concept. So I think this platform has a list of different CVEs. So I think we are told to click on search, and then we can now search for any keyword here that will help us get to see if there's any vulnerability in the organization. So would you like to search, or I should continue on my end?
Yes, continue on your end.
Okay.
And because I used a different approach to get the CVE ID. So, but I would want you to do your own. So I can now, because it's same task, but everyone can have a different approach.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So
all right. Let me follow you.
Okay. Yeah, so let's go back to this the diagram. So we're just going to look for anyone that would possibly have a vulnerability. So if I am maybe malicious actor or a threat actor that wants to immediately gain access to their infrastructure or network, or if I'm looking for a point where I can infiltrate that will give me access to every other thing, I think what I'll target first is the web server, because you said they have a publicly facing web server. So if for any reason I can maybe send malware, launch SQL injection attack or cross-site scripting or whatever on the website, which is a web application that is hosted on this web server, then I think from here, because this is in the same subnet, I should be able to laterally, or I should be able to go through all these places and then get whatever information or whatever I want to get. So let's start from seeing if this web server has a vulnerability. That's why I decided to start with.
So why did you choose the web server? Because from the scenario, I think the general controller handling the whole thing, I think, is the domain controller, which has more. I think the domain controller has more privileges, more resources. But then, why did you choose the?
Yes, thank you. So yeah, obviously, the domain controller would not be a bad one to start from, because if you can, since the domain controller controls the configuration of most of this stuff, the PCs in the organization, their normal workstations, it would be a good idea to start from the domain controller. But for some reason, again, they didn't tell us to assume that we are hackers or malicious people. They just said
choose the one you think might
yes,
be.
exactly. But I decided to say, if I'm not in the organization, the easiest place that can give me access, or what I will have access to, should be the web server, because all these other guys, all these ones they said, where is it? this network, no, where is it? This network consists of a number of machines. All the Windows, where is it? Okay, no
You know that
services. He said no services are available off-site other than email, which is facilitated by an on-site instance. But the
all right.
reason for me choosing web server is because they said they have a publicly facing web server, so it's publicly accessible. It could be their website. They are hosting their website on this server, and
Yeah.
since they are hosting their website on this server, as if I know their website, I can visit their website, use tools to see if it's vulnerable to any of these attacks like SQL injection attack or cross-site scripting or whatever. And then from there, I can now gain access to the server itself. So that's why I decided web server is best for me to start. But then again, since they were not really specific on which one you can choose from, again, domain controller is also a good one to start with.
Well, I actually focused more on the domain
Domain
controller.
controller. Yes,
The
so I think that's good. So if
central
you can decide
components.
to, you can, yeah, so you can decide to show us your strategy on how you went through with the domain controller, while I do for the web server. At least it's giving us from two different angles. So would you want to start with domain controller, or should continue
No, no,
with
go
the
ahead with it. When you're done with on, I can just give a.
Oh, okay. All right. So, so I was saying the web server now. Okay, so we can see that the name of the web server is Web25. The name, the name assigned to that device. Now we are looking at Microsoft IIS 7.5. So the thing we should be searching is there any reported vulnerability that affects Microsoft IIS 7.5? Then another thing is there any vulnerability for Windows Server 2008 R2? I think those are the only two things that we can check. So the Microsoft IIS is an application that is already on the Windows on the web server. So let me check for this Microsoft IIS 7.5. I think that would give me more stuff compared to just searching Windows Server. I'm sure Windows Server 2008 will have a lot and lots of
So
vulnerabilities.
much. If 2012, if 212, I mean 212 will have so much to it.
What did you say?
212 has now. Server 212 R2. Talk more for.
Yes, obviously,
I
yes, definitely. They would always have their vulnerabilities too. They will always
but
have.
sorry. Why? I think it's just a suggestion, even though it's
Yeah.
not part of the. Why do they have to withdraw updating all these outdated Windows? It's not supposed to be like even though more Windows are coming up, are evolving. So why do they have to like ignore all those 2008
Hmm.
R2, 2012 R2 servers? So why do Microsoft have to go that way? Like it just crossed my mind, not like it's part of
Okay.
the.
Maybe I think if I understand what you're saying why are people using 2012 and all these ones when maybe there's already 2022 Windows Server 2022 and other
Oh,
maybe.
why Microsoft is ignoring those patches? Is
Oh,
it
okay,
that
okay, okay,
yeah?
okay,
Why do
okay,
they have to ignore those patches?
okay.
And they don't even put it up, put just like people that are still using Internet Explorer. I
Yeah.
ask myself, why can't they just like even if you're still using the old version, you still be protected? Why do they have to ignore those old versions? It's like use and dump. Well,
Okay.
that's
So,
an idea.
yeah, that's a good question also. So I think, for example, the Microsoft Internet Explorer I talked about, they upgraded it, or they decided to do a Microsoft Edge. Although, if you notice, they never really removed it entirely from I think from Windows servers. If you install any Windows server, you most likely still see Internet Explorer. And the reason they left
Yeah.
this there because some people already are using it for some stuff, or there are some legacy systems and stuff that need that particular server to work. Like I know that there are some cameras, like if you want to access CCTV cameras, if you use normal browsers to try to access some CCTV cameras, you might not be able to access it except you use Internet Explorer or some other
Wow.
tool that will help you to access the camera. But
Mm.
Internet Explorer at that time was what the cameras now said, oh, for you to access our camera, you need to use Internet Explorer and stuff like that. So I think they just left it and said, let's leave it, but let's still create another thing. But for the ones of Windows Server, yeah, I think for all these Windows Server 2012, 2008, I think for some of them, they still release patches and updates for them. Except they target EOL, that's end of life, except they said it's end of life and we are no longer supporting it, we are no longer putting update for it, then it's challenging to, for example, Windows 7. Windows 7 is end of life, which means if you are still using Windows 7, you're not going to be getting any patches, you're not going to be getting updates. And obviously, there are known vulnerabilities there, so you'll be putting yourself at risk using Windows 7. But they did not remove it entirely because I mean, for some people just want to use it for some other stuff, for again the legacy stuff I talked about. So I think for anybody that wants to use any of this Windows Server, first of all, make sure that whatever you are using is not end of life and is still supported and patches are still coming.
That's available, yeah.
Yeah.
When you talk about patches, you mean updates?
Yes, updates.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So okay. All right, so let's look at this Microsoft's IIS 7.5. Microsoft IIS 7.5. Let's see what we find. Okay, so we can see some CVEs that matches our search. But these ones are pretty old because obviously if you look at the Windows Server since 2008. So then this vulnerability they found in this one was found in 2010, 2012. So this one says Microsoft FTP service 7.0 and 7.54. This process unspecified commands before TLS is enabled for a session. Are you there with me? I noticed that it sort of dropped off. Okay, let's see everything. All right, so looking at all these, let me see. I think the most recent will be better. CV 2012. Let's see. Okay, let's see this one. So the CVID here is 2012, CVE 2012 2532. Just for those that are again, the way these things are named is, or the way this is created is, for every vulnerability that is being found, an ID is attached to it. So we are in 2024 now. So anything you see now, any new ID will be CVE 2024 dash the next number. So for example, this 2012 is 2012. This vulnerability was found in 2012 and the ID is 2532. If let's say another one was found in that 2012, next one will be 2012 2533 2534, like that, till when the year ends. Maybe when it's now 2013, then the next one will be 2013 253, whatever it stops. So this is an old vulnerability. And I assume the reason is not patched because they said everything is still default. So they've not patched or they've not updated this service. So the description of this vulnerability says that the Microsoft FTP service, that's the file transfer protocol service, 7.0 and 7.5 for the Internet Information Services, that's meaning of IIS, process unspecified commands before TLS, that's Transport Layer Security, is enabled for a session, which allows remote attackers to obtain sensitive information by reading the replies to these commands, aka is also known as FTP command injection vulnerability. So again, the thing about some of these vulnerabilities, it's mostly those. Sometimes it could be technical to understand what the vulnerability is talking about in the first place, because it could be a whole lot if you're not the these are people that develop these platforms, understand what all these things are. but on your end, you know, okay, you know what FTP is. You might sort of have an idea of of the vulnerability they're talking about. So your own is to try to fix it, or that's what we as cybersecurity professionals try to do. We say, oh, we are vulnerable. We've checked and we've seen that this our server is vulnerable to this. This is vulnerable, and this is in CVE ID. Then we have to find a way to fix it, and which is mostly by updating it or patching it, or even to disable the service if not needed. So let's see further. Let's see what we can find. So this is not okay. Let's go back to. So it says go to this and say, okay, by typing various keywords, e.g. So we find a single specific security flaw that affects SciTech Inc. In other words, it must affect a piece of hardware or software. In our case, it's a software, and the scenario clearly mentions it or uses a component of that software. Do not select a buffer, okay. Make sure that the flaw is available in the version of the software installed, which it is. Read over the flaw you've chosen and do a few Google searches to find out more about how it works. Okay, so let's do that. So let me get more information about this. I think that this will give us clear understanding of what explain this. So no. Okay, it's in Microsoft. I'm going to list. See, how to give us a good explanation. Okay, so it's 2532 2532.
Yeah, that's the CVE ID.
Yes, 2532. Okay, here it is. So okay, it's less urgent, but it's important. Let me use another CV site. That are not giving us more information. CVE. There's one purple CVE website. What's the name?
Is it
Okay,
the NVD? NVD?
Yeah, I think
NVD or NIST.gov?
Yeah, these guys also give us good details. Let me go back. Okay. Okay. So these people are just giving us the CVSS as the score. Okay, but still no further explanation. So I'm just showing us the severity, which is medium, exploitability score. Let's check. Okay. Okay. Third party advisory. So this one still they're still using the same description that the other platform used, no explanation. So I think this third party might give us more. Let me open the new tab. Might give us more explanation. Spice on their website. it's okay. So these guys are just showing us the patch the patch for fixing the vulnerability. She's not really giving us good explanation. Okay, let me just try to grasp what this guy is saying. Did you see any, when you check, did you see any website that gave you clear understanding on what the vulnerability entails? Let me check this.
Let me search for this one you're looking at, because I only focused on the domain controller.
Yeah, domain controller one, right?
I looked at the NVD
site.
nvd.nist.gov, where I pulled up particular vulnerability the CV with the CVE ID.
Okay.
I think so. Did you check nvd.nist.gov?
Yeah, I did. It's just still stating the exact same thing that
You got
it's
from
not.
CVE.
What did you say?
It's stating the same thing you got from
Yes,
CVE.micro.
exactly. Yeah, so it's not, it's just very few websites that would explain every vulnerability that have been captured with a CV and say, okay, these are the steps in which it could affect the particular affected device or computer or server, and then to break it down as to how it works.
Break it
So
down how
that's
it
what I'm
works.
looking for. But for this one, it seems like I think this 2012, that's why maybe it's old, despite old. So anything that was put out for it might have been removed or something like that. So maybe that's why. 2012 is a long time. It's like 12 years ago.
Well, it depends on the what is it called, the vulnerability, because the one I had on the main controller from NVD, they shared the description of the vulnerability, the severity. They shared the weakness enumeration
Okay.
and the
So
known
maybe
affected operations.
maybe you maybe you can take us through the domain controller while I also check if I could get more recent vulnerability on that web server, not 2012. 2012 seems quite old, although that's 2008 is it's people don't really use 2008 servers again.
How did you even call it, off internet, like live something?
Yeah.
That it's been wiped off. Like that, as per that domain controller, when you're on that cvmiter.org, because looking at that Microsoft 2012, Windows
Okay.
2012, Windows Server 2012 RT, not just R2,
Yeah,
like
R2.
yeah, like yeah, is another it has so many unpatched vulnerabilities because it's been outdated, number one. So when I searched it up on that CVE, it showed a lot of starting from 2007. So I picked interest on a particular what's it called? A particular CVE ID, which is 2012 42287. That's the CVE ID. CVE 2012 2021 42287. CVE 2021. I don't know if you can. Okay, you're still looking up on that. Okay.
Yeah, that's what okay, so you have the CV
CVE,
ID.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
CVE 2021 42287.
42287.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
This one's a
it's
more,
basically telling you that, yeah, it's because it's focused on domain services,
yeah,
right? It's an active directory domain service, and it has elevation of privilege vulnerability.
vulnerability.
Yes. So if you check it up on NVD, it gave a little description. Even from that CV, it gave a little description. Then if you make further research, on Google, if you search on Google when last was the last updated patch for 2012, Windows 2012 RT, I think it was on the last update was 2023. I think if you searched up on Google, I think yeah, um the update ended on October 2023. So after this, the product was no longer receiving services, no security updates, none. So, but the
Okay.
main concern why this security flaw is significant is it's a domain controller, which is a central component in the whole network of the organization.
Yeah.
So that was what prompted me to pick interest in that
In
domain
it.
controller, yeah. And it's also something you can even access from, since the web server can be accessed from offsite, so you can
Yeah.
even access it offsite, and you know what happens when
Yeah.
someone gains access to the domain controller. You're like in charge. You can exploit a lot of vulnerabilities. So, but
Yeah. So yeah, just
you
to
see, you saw the NVD.
yes, is there I shared my screen to the MVD.
Okay.
Share my screen to the MVD. So basically, from at least from my own knowledge of when we talk about privilege escalation, which means um there's a possibility that since this is again I said it earlier that this is that domain controller is what they use to control their Active Directory, which is called Entra ID now. So every system, that is where that's like the main controller. They can use it to change the settings, the common the what's the name the name of the computers and anything they want to do. So if they get if it's vulnerable to privilege escalation or elevation of privilege, as you may call it, it means that if that happens, if you don't patch that vulnerability and they gain elevated privilege, that means they have like the admin capability on that server, and it means
Exactly.
they can do whatever they want to do.
Ransomware is for sure.
Yeah, so it's a very, I think this should be high. I think if we start doing the
Yeah.
scoring, it should be critical to fix such vulnerabilities. Let me go back. So make sure the floor is available. Okay. So in the issue report form, write out in your own word. Okay, so I think let's go to the issue report form. I think that's where we have like questions that would guide us to, yeah. So looking at the issue report form, it said CV ID. So if you are, let's put in a CV.
Yeah.
So they said we have to replace this with a CV ID. So let's assume we
Yeah.
are doing the one of domain controller, because I mean that's the one that is clearer.
Yeah.
That one, yeah, that vulnerability is clearer. So we can say is
2021
okay.
4287.
Okay, CVE 2021 4
42287.
Okay, 422. Yeah. So then the machine name, it said replace this with the machine name. So
DOM1 from the
DOM
diagram.
one. Yeah. So if you look at this, the machine name here, it's DOM1.
Diagrams, yeah.
Yeah.
DOM1, yeah.
So that's the name. DOM1. Just make this folder. Then how this issue could represent a risk to the organization. So again, because we are giving a report, so we've already said this that okay, so provide a step-by-step explanation how this issue would be used to attack the organization. So I think typically, since we know that the vulnerability would lead to a privilege escalation, if they can exploit that vulnerability, either through somehow they find a way to get a malware across to that computer, and the malware is supposed to exploit that vulnerability, or they use any other tool to exploit that particular vulnerability. Then once they get in, because it's a domain controller, they can now have access to, first of all, the computers in the same subnet, and then the other computers that can control, so they can modify names, they can change security policies and any existing stuff that is there because they have access to the domain controller. So does the attack have to begin from inside the institution or outside? So this is a very interesting question.
Well, I think it both. I think it's both in the sense that they have public access accessible web server to the web server. So you can attack from inside and outside. So it's from both sides. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I agree with you. I think for the attack, it could start from the inside in the sense that if there is a what they call them what do you call these threat actors? Insider threats, maybe someone that is someone that maybe
to
goes to a
notice those
website and
vulnerabilities and say, let me take advantage of this.
Exactly. So that kind of thing, if someone maybe mistakenly installs any stuff that could make the computer vulnerable, that could exploit the vulnerability. Then also from outside, let me see, hold on, there's something, but then
from
again, it
scanning the
says,
IP.
What did you say?
From outside, I think scanning the IP can also lead to the process of.
Yeah, so I think from outside, if you can stand if you have access to the although this IP address
I made it known.
is an intern, this is a private IP address. This is a private IP address, so you have to be inside before you can do anything. You can't. It's a private IP address that is provided here, so we don't have the public IP address that is attached to this. So I think I think it's mostly turning to internal, like it has to start from inside, because here they are saying that no services are available offsite other than the email. So even outside, there's no way you can access this because now we are not seeing any public IP attached to this guy. So how do you access this from outside the organization? It's going to be difficult. So except you are inside the organization, inside the building, inside the internal network, or for some reason you already have a malware or something that is already installed here that can give you remote access from outside. So I think it should start from inside based on what we are seeing here and based on this fact that they said no services are available except the web server that is publicly facing.
Okay. That means the domain controller cannot be accessed from outside the premises, but every other server, just like the other webmail, which is publicly facing, can be accessed from the outside. Okay.
Exactly. Because if they give us a public IP, then that's a different case. But these are private IPs. So
do you think someone that has access to the web server can also escalate privilege to the domain?
Yes, definitely. Someone that has access to the web server, since this is in the same subnet, they can also go to the domain. So if I'm outside, I think the best bet is to start trying to see if I can gain access to their web server from obviously hosting their website. Then from there, once I've taken control of the web server, then I can now go to the domain controller, which will enable me to control every other computer Yeah, so I think that
So
answers that.
basically for the attack to come from inside, it has to be a function of an insider threat
Yes, exactly.
or the controller.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right, okay.
So here now the next question is, does it require physical access to the equipment or not? Um well, for it depends. I think in this case it's does it require physical access? I don't think so. A remote access can enable you to do, but since they are talking about, first of all, you said that it has to be an internal threat.
Internet threat.
Again,
That's it.
it's a tricky question. What do you think about this?
I think it requires both because an insider threat could have access to the machine, to the
Yeah,
access to the subject, to the
yeah,
object,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's basically more of an from the inside. If you are coming from the point of domain controller, so all attack coming from the domain controller side should come from the inside because it requires having access to the machine from my own point of view. So
Yeah,
I
so
don't know if you have another approach to that.
yeah,
You
so
know?
I think in some way, because again, we are looking at a computer that, I mean, a server, although now it's a server. The domain controller is a server, and they
Yeah,
said the server. I think that server is in that building, is in that organization. So for some reason, um I think it has to, yeah, there has to be some form of physical. Maybe someone goes there to use the server to do some stuff. Maybe okay,
yeah,
the server, anyway, the server does not need to, you don't need to physically touch the server if you're in the organization. You can always have your computer and
yeah. Since you have
remotely
your
access
own,
it. Yeah.
yeah,
But it's a very tricky question. Anyway, let's go to the next one. But in my own take, and based on what you said, I think somehow someone needs to interface with it either, but the person has to be inside the organization, so not
yeah, because
physically
it can only
touch.
be accessed inside the organization. That's the only part of the
Yes,
servers services that can be accessed on the premises. Only that web, you know.
yeah, only the web
If you're attacking
server.
from the web server, that is
Go
where you can
ahead.
do remotely. Then
Okay,
if you're attacking from the domain, I think that is when you can attack from the inside. It has to be
inside.
an activity of an insider threat. So
Exactly.
yeah. Mm.
So he said the next question is saying, does it require a large amount of expertise or not? Um, so that I think they're talking about in terms of exploiting the vulnerability. So maybe yes, I think definitely for you to exploit this vulnerability, you must know how to exploit vulnerability. So yes, I think it requires. But here they said a large amount. I think someone that well, I don't think it requires a large amount of expertise, but it requires some expertise and then the right tools. If you have the right tools, you have the right, and this is publicly available stuff. So I think, yeah, it requires some expertise, but maybe not so much, maybe not large, in my own
Yeah.
opinion. I don't know
Yeah.
if,
Yeah, of course it does. It
okay,
does because you must have to know what you want and how to go about it. So, level of experience to an extent, you
yeah,
have to do it. Because if you don't have an experience, those are vulnerabilities, you cannot even recognize that it's a vulnerability. So, it
yeah,
requires an experienced
okay,
approach. Yeah.
okay. So the next one is saying, how would the attack progress? So again, it's coming from the person. For maybe for some reason there's a malware in that computer, or even if it's not necessarily a malware, someone does something that gives an external person access to that computer. Then from there, the person can just escalate privilege, because in most cases, I think escalation of privilege is a post exploitation stage. Because for some reason, if someone gains access to that server, that domain controller, the person could just have a normal access, because you could have a normal access or a local account access to any Windows computer, but there is the admin access, which is what the escalation of privilege is saying, because the admin access can do whatever they want to do. They can delete stuff, create stuff, and whatever. So I think, again, this is a post-exploitation attack. So I think we've already explained how the attack will progress based on, I think, the existing knowledge and what they give to us. So how this issue operates, replace with an explanation. Okay. So again, what we need to do for this question, how this issue operates, I think it's just saying what is the vulnerability all about, which is already, I think, is already covered in this place.
Previous discussion, I think.
Yeah, so yeah, it was already covered in that initial, where is the CPID? Yeah, yeah. Okay, I think we've already discussed where we talked about how you could explore, how you could perform the elevation of privilege stuff. So we already discussed possibilities. So I think that was what that question is asking.
Yeah.
How this issue should be remediated or fixed?
Yeah, you are talking about the same as the domain controller, but how the issue should
Yes, the
be
domain
remediated.
controller.
Yeah, meaning what action should be taken and when,
Yes, it's saying what the institution must do to reduce the risk or eliminate
Yeah,
this threat, and how
yeah,
soon should they act and why. If you
yeah.
decide that the issue requires a patch, provide the URL where the patch can be found.
Uh, I didn't go deep into that, but to me, this is the rate is a very severity vulnerability that requires immediate attention because
Yeah,
to mitigate, it requires a regular security patch and updates because the operating system Windows 22, 2012 R2, R2, because it's not just Windows Server, you have to be specific, that R2.
yeah, they have to. Yes,
Remove
that
that
different.
R2, it's another thing, you know.
Yeah,
So they should implement security and put in best practice, such as
yeah,
network segmentation, strong authentication mechanism, and regular security updates. So I
yeah,
think these three things and more, but at least these are the three major things: network segmentation, strong authentication, and regular security audit. So it can help reduce the likelihood of a successful attack, So
yeah, yeah.
there's no supporting URL to that. I didn't go deep into that. Maybe we can as well do it.
Okay.
I think,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So I think you've literally said it, because again, if you're talking about if you're answering this question of what the institution must do to reduce the risk or eliminate this threat, and how soon they should act, again, for us to know how soon they should act, or if they should, or if this threat is really critical, that's where that's where this scoring comes into play. This threat scoring, or this vulnerability scoring, where you check the score, because there are different models. We have the trike, we have the dread. I think this one they talked about us using dread model. We have the dread model. We have
Yeah,
so many other models
yeah,
that shows, okay, this particular risk or this particular threat is easy to exploit. If it's easy to exploit, that means it's definitely going to be critical, because for something to be easy to exploit, that means even a script kiddie, any random person can exploit it. It does not need expertise. So if you've ranked that vulnerability as easy to exploit, if you've seen it as maybe it's not just one computer that has the vulnerabilities, it's lots of computers, lots of servers, and obviously it's falling into the critical area. Then there are so many other things that needs to determine um, if you need to like prioritize patching that or fixing the vulnerability. So I think in this case, definitely, because even from the idea of privilege escalation, that means it's critical, and it needs to be treated soon as possible. Then if you decide the issue requires a patch, yeah, definitely, I think this requires a patch. That CVE requires a patch to fix that certain issue. And again,
Yeah.
like you said, you are explaining what the organization needs to do to like prevent these threats again in the future. They need to consider configuration management, patching. So the patching is not just they have to have like a periodic patching where they say, okay, every 1 week or every 2 weeks we patch all the systems and we make sure that there's no vulnerability, there's no existing vulnerability. And again, audit is important to make sure that someone is checking that all these things have been patching, not just saying, oh, we have softwares. And I think that's the problem most organizations could have. They could have a software that does the entire patching, but who is doing the reporting? Who is making sure that the patches are well applied and there's no existing vulnerability? So those things need to also be monitored, and that's where the audit comes in, the periodic audit by maybe the cybersecurity team or the IT team in case they don't have a cybersecurity team, because not every organization has a cybersecurity team, and every organization could face this. So the IT team could maybe someone in the IT team that is security inclined might also want to look at that.
Yeah, I think I found something for the patches of this CVE 2021 fund. Let me paste on the
Okay.
chat. You can share on the screen. Let's see if it's related to. Check this out. I shared something.
Okay.
Check.
Okay.
According to the I think they share the metrics or something. The severity level high. I'm not sure if I read it right, but let's just go through it together and see if it's related. Just it showed that it will still load because yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So I think this is good. So this is the scoring. It's based on severity. So here, okay, impact is the elevation of privilege. That's the impact of this vulnerability being exploited. Severity is important, and these are the ways these are the base score metrics, the way they scored it. Like again, I think this is Microsoft. This is MSRC. Let's see what this implies. What does MSRC mean?
Let's see.
MSRC. Okay, so Microsoft Security Response Center. Okay, yeah, that's clear. So looking at this, they said the attack vector drop down. So this metric reflects the context by which vulnerability exploitation is possible. The base score increases the more remote or logically and physically an attacker can be in order to exploit the vulnerability component. So okay, value network. Okay, this is looking at the level. So this is at the network level. The attacker could gain access to this. Could exploit this. Then attack complexity. How complex is this attack going to be if someone decides to exploit it? So I think this also describes the stuff. And then the value is high. So it's by it being high, what does it mean? Okay, a successful attack depends on conditions beyond the attacker's control. That is, a successful attack cannot be accomplished at will, but requires the attacker to invest some measurable amount of effort in preparation or execution against the vulnerable components before a successful attack can be expected. For example, a successful attack may require an attacker to gather knowledge about the environment in which
That's from the insider.
in which the vulnerable targets exists. Okay, so it's high. So I think this is, I think they told us to use a particular model, a model for scoring, which we'll look into. But this is the one Microsoft is using. Confidentiality. Does it Does it pose problem on, like, does it have a confidentiality risk or integrity risk or availability? So I think these are their metrics for scoring. For scoring it as 6.5, which is it's important to treat it. So let's go back and see. Okay, so it's gen modeling. So let's check gen modeling. So this,
I think the supporting, sorry, the supporting URL should be this MSRC.
yes, so this should be the supporting URL or one of the supporting URLs that will help give more information about how to patch it and yeah. So okay, this will be, so again, it could be more than one URL, but it said URLs. So now dread modeling. So this is the model. Again, if you look at let's look at some models or threat models. Let's see the different threat models that we have there. So they all have meaning. That dread that we saw has a meaning. Like each letter has a meaning. Threat models. Threat intelligence. Try. What else is there? Okay. So let's look at the dread. Since they told us to use dread, okay, this one, this one, threat modeling methodology to use in 2024. We'll go back to the dread, but I want us to look at some examples. Yeah, so there's Stride. Stride is a well-established threat modeling methodology created by Microsoft. Okay, so it's Microsoft that created this Stride. So the meaning is spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, and also denial of service. So you are going to check, is spoofing possible, is tampering possible, is repudiation possible, is information disclosure possible. So based on this, that's how you do your rating. So there's PASTA. Again, PASTA has, the meaning is process for attack. P is process of attack simulation and threat analysis. So these are different threat models, but they told us to use dread threat modeling, and dread means damage potential, reproducibility, exploitability, affected users, and discoverability. So this way would rate our current current threat of vulnerability. So we are looking at the damage potential. Can exploiting this vulnerability cause a lot of damage to the organization, and how many computers will be affected? If it's something that would affect all the computers in the organization, definitely you need to prioritize it. But if it's something that will just affect one computer, so the damage potential is not really much. Then reproducibility, how easy is it to reproduce this type of vulnerability? Then exploitability, is it easy to exploit, or you need some expertise, some level of expertise and some tools to exploit it? Then what are the affected users? And then how easy is it to discover? Because some vulnerabilities could be, and some threats could be very difficult to discover, but I think this one is easy to discover if they have some like maybe patch management system or patch management solution. So I think let's go. So they say here how to perform threat analysis: identify possible threats, rate each threat using a scale of 1 to 10 for each of the 5 threat components, calculate the total threat score to identify the most critical threats, and then determine the mitigation strategies for each of the critical threats. So I think let's go back to this one. Like, this gives us a full, EC Council gives us like a better explanation of the threat modeling. Okay. So I'll put down this link for anyone that wants to also go through and read more on it. So you can see the DREAD model. What is the DREAD model? DREAD model quantitatively assesses the severity of a cyber threat using a scaled rating system that assigns numerical values to risk categories. The DREAD model has 5 categories: damage, which is to help to understand the potential damage a particular threat is capable of causing, like we explained earlier. Then reproducibility, identify how easy it is to replicate an attack. If you want to simulate an attack and say, oh, in my organization now, let's try, I mean, doing penetration testing, let's try to see if we can attack or gain access, then how easy is it? If it's easy, then you need to prioritize it. Then exploitability, analyze the system's vulnerabilities to ascertain susceptibility to cyber attacks. So how easy is it to exploit? Then affected users, calculate how many users will be affected by the cyber attack. I think this case should be everyone, since obviously the domain controller is affected. Then discoverability determines how easy it is to discover vulnerable points in the system infrastructure. Okay, so for the damage potential, we're looking at how much damage could the attack cause. 0 is no damage. Obviously, it can't be 0 because yeah, it's going to cause damage. Information disclosure.
Severity high should be high
Yeah,
because
so we are what we are to do now. If you look at this place, we're supposed to assign a number to this each of these uh uh each of these categories. So we can either assign 0, 5, 8, 9, or 7 or 10. So it could be 0 to 5, that's if there's no damage, 5 to 7, 5 to 8 if there's information disclosure, 8 to 9 if it's not sensitive, then like that, or 10 for this. So I think here in this case, um, there's obviously damage, so it can't be 0. Information disclosure, non-sensitive user data required to individuals or employer compromised, non-sensitive administrative data compromised, destruction of an information system data and or application. So which one do you think out of these should be our number? Which number should be assigned to that particular category?
the damage is obviously possible. That should be high. The damage, there is obviously damage because considering from the domain controller point of view, then information disclosure should be high. Should be
Yeah, I think definitely if they gain access, there will surely be
there's
information.
access to non-sensitive user data related to individuals or employees compromised is high because
Yes.
it's the domain controller that assigns and can remove a user. So it's obviously some sensitive information regarding the company is in their database. So it's been compromised. So it's high. So non-sensitive administration data compromised. There's non-sensitive information. So that should be. That this non-sensitive administrative data compromised, are they trying to find out if there's no non-sensitive information the attacker had access to? Is that what that means?
I think what this means is saying non-sensitive administrative data compromised. That means there's some administrative data that is compromised, but it's not so sensitive.
Yeah, I don't think most of the data in there, because since it's the main component of the whole network, so there's no information there that is not sensitive if you look at it from domain controller point of view.
Yeah. So I'm looking at assigning it a 10 because obviously
Yes.
if they gain access, it could destroy the entire information system and then data, or they could take down any application or cause application unavailability. So I'm thinking of I think any score from 5 to 10 would suffice, but 10 being the highest, I think 10 should be it for the damage it will cause. So I think assigning 10 will not be bad. But then again, it can be anything but 0. Then next one is reproducibility. How easily can the attack be reproduced? What do you think? How easily can this attack be reproduced? So if you are a penetration tester and they say, oh, you said there's a vulnerability that can be exploited and it will cause escalation of privilege. Okay, show us, try and exploit it, or try to reproduce the attack, the same scenario, maybe from external person trying to gain access. Just reproduce it. Do you think it's be difficult or impossible or complex, or it's easy or very easy?
Yeah,
So,
if I'm a certified ethical hacker and I'm doing penetration testing, which I'm being given the right, it's very easy because of what they are using outdated Windows server. As an insider, once I'm an insider looked at this but still using a default OS configuration setting, it makes the job 50% easy.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that it's easy, but I'm tending to, I'm looking at 7.5. Even though it's easy, we can agree it's easy, but I'm not sure if it's very easy, because definitely we have to, the attacker or whoever wants to exploit this vulnerability. I think we are talking in case of a penetration tester that most likely has access to the environment. But what if it's an external person?
Oh,
Anyway, they said reproduced. Let's give it 7.5. I think what I was talking about is exploitability, or we can give it 10. We could,
you can make it. I think that reproducibility, they have difficulty, impossible, complex, easy. So it's between complex and easy. So 7.5, because two things are involved here. If you're not what is it called? An ethical hacker,
mm,
you and you don't have access to the physical environment, is going to be
yeah,
difficult. You
exactly.
just have to come from the process of a web server to start doing your reconnaissance, to scanning the web public
Exactly.
IP. Then if you're coming from the point of you're attacking from the domain, which has to come from inside. So it's going to be, I'm using 7.5 is good.
Yeah, I think that's
Motivation.
okay. Let's give it 7.5. 10 minutes. So that's a 7.5. Um, next one, exploitability. What is required to launch the attack? 2.5, advanced programming and networking skills. 5 says available attack tools. 9 says web application proxies. 10 says web browser. Hmm.
I think this exploitability depends from where you're coming from, right? If I'm just saying, we are just logging on it. But
Yeah,
if you are coming from a web browser, that means you're coming from that web server point. Then I think it requires available attack tools. If you are to ask me, yeah.
I think that's my thoughts, because definitely you have to have available attack tools. Either some tools are carry, maybe using Metasploit or whatever, or
Yeah.
any other tools that are available. But I think we need available attack tools. If we don't have any available attack tools, except to start creating one. But I think in this case, to exploit it, you need available attack tools. Advanced programming and networking skills. Maybe you don't. I don't think this particular vulnerability requires
No,
any
yeah.
advanced programming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you don't need to
Yes.
start writing any complex
Yeah.
script or
Oh,
something to
yeah.
exploit it. You just need to get, you have tools already and things that can exploit it. So I think it should be 5. In 9 and 10, they talked about web browser.
Yeah.
I don't too much think we are interfacing or we have anything to do with web browser. If for this escalation of privilege, I'm not sure if web browser is going to be involved. So I think the answer should be 5 though, or the rating should be 5 for that one.
Yeah.
So let's see. Again, this thing could differ. The fact that we chose 5 does not mean someone else cannot choose
Yeah.
what
Another rule.
yes, someone can choose 2.5 based on it. Again, is different people's rating. So some people can choose that you need advanced programming, depending on
But
if
I
they
think
think.
if the advanced programming is required, they shouldn't be using outdated and the default operating system. So it should have been a different case scenario if the scenario did not specify that they were using default
Yeah.
tools. You know, it should
Mm.
have needed more sophisticated approach.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So let's okay, we've assigned. I think we've assigned the number. So let's see the next one. Affected users. How many people would the attack affect?
Almost all the all
Yes, I
users.
think it's all users definitely. Once that computer is compromised, definitely all users will be
Uh,
affected. So we 10 for that. So the 10. It's not something isolated. Then discoverability. How easy is the vulnerability to discover? 0, hard to discover the vulnerability. 5, HTTP requests can uncover the vulnerability. I don't think so. 8, vulnerability found in the public domain. I don't think so. It's not vulnerability found in the web address bar or form. So
I,
hard to
I think
discover. It's not, I don't.
they have
It's
a
not.
website. Their website should have been, just using their website scanning with normal virus total and all those open source scanning tools. You can determine if it's HTTP request. I don't know.
Well, yeah. In this case, we are talking about. Okay, so they said, if we assign 0 to it, which means that the vulnerability is hard to discover.
Mm.
Now I'm not sure if who is discovering it. Is it the malicious person or the organization? I don't know what they mean by. I don't know who this is targeted at, but I'm assuming it's the threat actor. So
Threat
in
actor.
this, where they talk about HTTP requests can uncover the vulnerability. So if the vulnerability is related to a web server, and maybe if it was that web server, we can say, oh, as someone is visiting their website, they could do something or they could use Bob Suite or some of these tools or web application tools to determine this vulnerability. But I don't in this case I don't think it's 5. Vulnerability found in the um, public domain, vulnerability found in web address bar or form.
If
Um,
you had shared the company website, I think
mhm.
this question would have been that easy to answer because the
Well,
website determine if they are on HTTP, HTTPS. I don't know if
yes,
that.
but yeah, but in this case, we are looking at. Remember, we are looking at one vulnerability right now, which is that domain, the one that affects the domain controller. So um, there's no way. I don't think it's related to this. When they talk about HTTP, they're talking about web application or web server. So I don't know. I'm in this case. I'm not even sure what's scoring we can give it because I don't know. This modeling this thing is this modeling or this model is really strange. It's really weird. I don't think anybody uses this model.
Okay.
Hmm. Seems like you dropped off.
No, I'm sounding. Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, I can hear you. Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm
it's
accessing from two devices, so one is off.
okay, all right. So it seems like uh this particular model is not so good, like because the model is, I mean, it's really confusing. I don't think they really use this threat model. There are other better threat models to use to assign a score to any
No.
vulnerability. But if I were to choose, I think maybe I would just choose. I would either choose 8 or 0 because I'm looking at vulnerability found in web address bar or form. It's not related to, if it was web server, then if we're looking at vulnerability in the web
Yeah.
server, then we can say yes, this 10 or this 5 would work. But we are looking at
Yeah.
the domain controller, so maybe let's put it at 0. Maybe for an external person, maybe it might be hard if I'm an external person, except I know that there's a vulnerability in that place. There's no way I'm going to be able to exploit it. So let me just leave it at 0. Its model is not so good. I don't like it. Overall threat rating. The overall threat rating is calculated by summing the scores obtained across the 5 key areas. The risk severity categories for the threat are as follows. So if your total score is 40 to 50, then it's critical and you need to address it immediately. If it's between 25 to 39, it's severe, is a severe vulnerability and you need to consider it for review and resolution soon. If it's medium, that is, it poses a moderate risk and you need to review after addressing the severe and critical risk. Then if it's low, if it's low risk to infrastructure and data, then it's 1 to 10. So let's sum up.
Yeah.
Let's sum up the one we have here. So this is 10 plus 7.5, that's 17.5, plus this, that's 22.5. Then 22.5 plus this, that is 32.5. So 32.5, let's see where it falls under. 32.5 falls under high. So we can easily just see, we can see our average listening is high. Can then do, they said average dread score. So we can do, since they said average, we do the 32.5 that we got divided by 5. Put it on. So 32.5 divided by the 5. So that's like 6.5 rating. 6.5. So 6.5. So it's quite high. So I think this answers all the questions. So I think what we need to just our takeaway from this is that we need to first of all understand more dread modeling and the one that will be applicable to you in your organization. So most organizations have the one that they use to score that is better for them. So they'll say, oh, use dread, oh, use strike, oh, use what other one is there? Use pasta, use this and that. So but I don't, this dread modeling is not so much a good modeling because of the way it is.
Yeah, it's just a scenario, not really that advanced.
Yeah, exactly.
But when it comes to these models, is there do you think companies choose just like when you look at the ISC square policies, they will tell you that some organizations may not adapt to ISC square policies. It's not like it's generally accepted, but it's one of the top policies that plays a role in the cybersecurity industry. So when it comes to these models, right? Do you think organizations choose this model based on the nature of what they do, or do you think, because it's not a must, just like you said, some might choose dread model, some might choose pasta model. So how do they choose this? Is it based on what they offer, or is it based on what is required by standard or policy?
Okay,
Does
so
that make sense?
So again, I think it depends on first of all, it depends on the organization, and if the organization has what they call a threat intelligence team, because those are the people that are looking into threats, they look into all the scoring stuff. So they would look at the different threat models and say, based on our organization, based on our operations, I think this one will be better. This one, it will be better we use this model and maybe it's easier to understand. So there are different reasons for choosing different models. Why some models apply to some specific type of maybe attacks. So I think it differs. Yeah. So I can't really say. I will even need more understanding on why they choose to use a specific model and instead of the other one. So I think that's where we need to get more and get more information on that.
That's okay.
Okay, so let's have it. So I think this is brings us to the end of of this particular session. Hold on, let me go back to that. So in general, I think the mistake that, or what if you are to advise this Cytherea.inc, you just tell them, oh, always make sure that you go update your patch any vulnerability. Then they should consider using or getting a more recent Windows server instead of, using an older version, because the older versions for some, I don't know if this one is end of life, but if it's end of life, then it's difficult to get patches for them. So
Yeah.
I think
And
that,
also the default configurations.
yes,
Because
yes,
most of their servers default configuration often have a very well known so much vulnerabilities, and attackers can exploit these weaknesses.
yeah,
Right. So
yes. I think those are the basic advice we will give them in order to resolve all of this. Yeah. So thank you.
my pleasure.
Yeah, so in the next one we'll also be looking at another scenario. I think that one is also
Okay.
interesting. Yeah. So we'll be
All right.
looking at another scenario, and this is just for those that would watch this later. If you have any comments or any other thing you want to say relating to what the scenario we looked at, if you have other recommendations, you can also put that down in the comment section, and then I think that would really help to kick off more conversations on this entire scenario.
Yeah.
Also, any questions I need asking will be asked in the comment section.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I think let me just end the recording. Stop recording.